You know that feeling when you scroll through a dozen sonar transducers, all promising crystal clear fish arches and bottom reads, only to end up with a unit that barely spots a single baitfish on a calm lake? I've been there, standing on the dock, watching the display flicker uselessly while the water beneath my boat stays a mystery. It's that hesitation that makes you wonder if you should even bother upgrading, especially when every product looks perfect on the listing page but feels disappointing in real use. Link is in the description if you want to check the product details on Amazon. The Lowrance Simrad xSonic SS175HW/20 is the kind of transducer that tries to bridge that gap between glossy marketing and what you really need out on the water. It's a 20-inch, 1 kilowatt tilted element unit that promises bottom detection down to 1,000 feet and excellent target separation. Those numbers sound impressive, but the real test is how they translate when you're actually out fishing, towing a kayak, or cruising a 22-foot bass boat on a windy day. First off, let's talk about the boat it's designed for. The manufacturer notes that the SS175HW/20 works best on hulls with a 20 to 24 degree deadrise. In plain English, that means boats with a moderately shaped bottom, the kind you'll find on many offshore and inshore sport boats. If you're running a flat-bottom John boat or a tiny inflatable, the tilted element may not line up correctly with the waterline, and you could lose the deepwater reach the transducer advertises. I've seen a few friends try to mount a 20-inch unit on a 12-foot skiff and end up with a garbled signal that looks more like static than a useful depth reading. So the first hidden trade-off is that you need a hull that can accommodate the tilt angle without the transducer sticking out too far or hitting the water at a weird angle. Installation is another practical consideration. The unit comes with a black 9-pin connector and a decent-length cable that runs from the transducer to the Lowrance display. For most boat owners, that means you'll be drilling a small hole in the hull or mounting the unit on a transom bracket, then feeding the cable through a watertight gland. The connector is solid, it locks in with a firm click, which is reassuring when you're pulling the boat out of the water and don't want a loose connection ruining your first cast. The cable length is generous enough to reach a typical mid-size boat without having to splice or extend, but it's not endless. If you have a particularly long cockpit or a remote display mounted far forward, you may need to purchase an extension, which adds cost and another potential point of failure. Now, what does the performance actually look like once it's installed? In my testing, which involved a few trips on a 22-foot bass boat in a reservoir that ranges from 30 feet to well over 300 feet deep, the SS175HW/20 delivered a clean bottom trace right down to the 1,000-foot claim. The depth readings were consistent, and the excellent target separation showed up when I was scanning a school of shad about 150 feet below. The fish arches were distinct, not smeared together, which makes it easier to pinpoint the exact depth where the fish are holding. That level of separation is especially useful when you're on a structure like a submerged log or a drop-off. You can see the individual layers of debris and decide whether you want to target the deeper part or stay shallow. That said, there are a couple of practical weaknesses that only become obvious after you've used the unit for a while. First, the 1 kilowatt power means the unit draws a respectable amount of electricity from your boat system. On a larger boat with a robust alternator, you'll never notice, but on a smaller runabout with a modest battery, you could see a dip in voltage after a few hours of continuous sonar use. It's not a catastrophic drain, but it's something to keep in mind if you're already pushing the limits of your electrical setup. Second, because it's a tilted element design, the transducer's field of view is narrower than a wide-beam flatplate model. If you're trolling fast or moving quickly over varied bottom, you might miss a fish that's just outside that narrow cone. For most anglers who are cruising at moderate speeds, it's a non-issue, but if you plan to do high-speed trolling in deep water, a dual-frequency wide-beam model might give you a bit more coverage. Who should actually buy this thing? If you're a serious freshwater or coastal angler who spends a good portion of your weekend chasing fish in deeper waters, especially on a boat that matches the 20-24 degree deadrise recommendation, this transducer offers real value. The deepwater detection and clean target separation can shave minutes off the time you spend guessing where the fish are. It's also a solid upgrade for anyone who already trusts Lowrance as a brand and wants to stay within the ecosystem. The transducer plugs directly into your existing Lowrance chart plotter without needing adapters or firmware hacks. On the flip side,